I want to ask you about the indictments that were unsealed yesterday about against Ban Ki-moon's brother and nephew, Dennis Bahn. I'm asking because I asked here in this room in May 2015 about this same transaction. And now that the indictments come out, it quotes from emails written by Ban Ki-moon's nephew, in which he says that he was using the reputation of his family and the access of his family to the leader of country one, which is Qatar, the Emir of Qatar, in order to sell the building. So I wanted to know, given that it wasn't answered at the time, what is the response? Because I know that you're going to try to say, well, he's left, so there's no answer. But I want to know from your office and from the Office of Internal Oversight Services of the UN, given that some of this was public knowledge in May and that it's now formalized in an unsealed indictment, what is the UN system going to do? And what do you personally say? Did you actually ask the Secretary General at the time about his knowledge of his nephew using his name to sell the building in Vietnam?
Look, I know, and the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon had told me at the time that he had absolutely no knowledge of his nephew's activities or whereabouts and so forth. The indictment that was unsealed yesterday is not one that concerned the United Nations, and I have no comment on it.
Wait, follow-up question. I'm sorry. You said he had no knowledge where he was, but at the time period.
No, I said he had no knowledge of his activities.
Well, one of his activities was being employed by Colliers International, which was then and is now a landlord of the United Nations on 45th Street. So, one, how is that acceptable? And two, just state, when is the last time that when you asked him then, when he said he had no knowledge of his activities, that he was trying to sell a building in Vietnam, that he was emailing that he had Ban Ki-moon support?
I think the statement I've just said speaks for itself. If you have any further questions on the previous Secretary General, I will provide you with the name of the person who's currently speaking on his behalf, which is not me.
And what about Colliers? Now that it appears in the indictment.
As I said, we have absolutely no comment on.
Right, it's a UN contractor.
But you've said something. I've said something. We'll leave it at that. But thank you.
Since part of the questions raised by the indictment have to do not with Ban Ki-moon, but with OIOS and did it act, and Colliers International, which is still a UN contractor. I wanted to know, are you referring me to Mr. Lee Do-woon to answer those questions, or are you going to answer them?
I'm telling you that I have no comment on the indictment, and if you wish to pursue a line of questioning as to the activities of the former Secretary General, I would refer you to the gentleman you just mentioned.
You'd said that you'd look into Mr. Jeffrey Sachs, a UN official, saying that he would work on Ban Ki-moon's campaign. Is that a question for you or Mr. Lee Do-woon?
I will get back to you on that.
Okay, on Gambia, I wanted to ask, the President, Yahya Jammeh, has said that no one can take him out of power or should take him out of power until the Supreme Court rules, which will be in May. Does the UN think, what do they think of that?
We are very much supporting the efforts of ECOWAS. I understand the mission by the Nigerian president who's leading a number of ECOWAS leaders will take place later this week. Mr. Chambas himself will brief the Security Council. We want to see a peaceful transition that answers the hopes and aspirations of the people of the Gambia.
And I wanted to ask about the SRSG of Libya. There's several Security Council members have said that there's now I guess competition or race or for the next SRSG, including a candidate, Mr. K of the UK, and that there are other candidates. Can you just confirm that his term expires in March, and can you say, what the process is for select? Just since it'll be the first one done under Antonio Guterres.
No, I can't.
What is the process?
I don't know what the status of his contract is. If I'll find out, and I will let you know easily.
Sure. I wanted to ask you on South Sudan. The Foreign Ministry spokesman Marwin McCall has said today that the government is no longer interested in the 4,000-person additional peacekeepers. And since this was so much discussed and they had said they agreed to it, what is the response of the UN system or the Secretary General? I have a follow-up to this announcement by South Sudan.
Well, we've seen those reports in the press. Our colleagues on the ground are engaging with the transitional government to get a bit of clarity on the issue. Obviously, as you know as well as I do, the Security Council authorized the deployment of the protection force because of the critical need to protect civilians. It's not the regional protection force needs to materialize, and will continue to work with the government and national unity on this issue.
Has there been any progress in deploying the 226 police that the Security Council also mandated for Burundi to Burundi? Do you have any update on that?
No, none that I can
And they-
report.
okay.
Go ahead, last one.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys, yesterday you put out a statement saying, statement from the United Nations on Afghanistan. And so in opening it up, I was wondering, like, is it from the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Secretary?
It's from
Is
my,
there some
my
new-
office speaking on behalf of the
Right.
Secretary.
Is this a new, I guess, can you say, since we've for several years gotten statements from the spokesman on behalf of the Secretary General, what, just
if
explain
you
what's behind it?
If you haven't seen it, then it is clearly new. Maggots.
Right, but why is it being done?
It's just different way of us expressing our position. Yes, sir.
Just ask about this change, just very briefly, just because it's, many people say that the public misunderstands when people say the UN, the difference between the Security Council and the Secretariat. So, for
Well,
example, if they judge the Security Council, they
Right.
want to cut money.
No, I
to,
understand.
so doesn't this
Val-
create a greater danger of
No,
that
I think
happening?
it's attributable to me as spokesman to the Secretary General. Lisa, you on the phone?